okay, this might seem like a no-brainer for our parents out there, but we have to be able to share with our students that God created sex. What if we don't?
If you don't, then naturally we as human beings, whether it's because of the influence of the church or just your natural predisposition or whatever, but we will by nature want to push God out of our sexuality. We want to think that God and sexuality are on two different planes. And understanding that God created, He's the creator, He's the founder, He is the inventor of sex.
That's a cool word.
Yeah.
Inventor.
Yeah, He's the inventor of sex, brings Him and sex into the same plane, into the same realm. And it's like we talked about in the last video, that it's the idea of surrendering or yielding our bodies to God, who is love. And this is a very personal part of our bodies that we're yielding to God. The Apostle Paul kind of put it this way. He says that we are presenting our members to God, meaning that you're presenting even the most sensitive and the most delicate portions of your physical body, as well as your emotional and spiritual life, to God, and seeing Him as the one who is the author and perfecter of all things.
And the direction of this conversation with your student should be like this. You want to get to a place where you can ask them a question. When you hear the word sex, what do you think of? And you want them to be able to say, I think of God. To get to that place where they say, I think of God. When I think of sex, I think of God. And that's important, because most people don't. When they think of sex, they think of something else. They think of the animal instinct,
Right.
the fleshly appetite of just having sex.
Right.
But God created sex. So that means that we need to be able to bring now God back in kind of the authority over this word.
Yeah.
So I like to always ask the kids, like, hey, what do you think of when you think of sex? And they're like, Dad, don't like, I don't want to tell you, and I'm like, no, let's talk about it. And then you help them see that, no, God created sex, and He loves sex.
Yeah. I mean, and this leads to even like deeper topics when you were to ask, if you were to ask your child or even yourself, of like, how do you define good sex versus bad sex? Like, how do you think about these ideas in your mind? And it does show like how our minds go in relation to God when we try to answer these questions. Because if someone were to ask me as a 13-year-old, how do you define good sex? I would think pleasure, right? If it's very pleasurable, it's good, right? Mm-hmm. That's good sex. And, talking to my friends who had already had sex at that age, they'd be like, yeah, I'm good at sex. Like, I'm good in bed. And that's what they meant. They meant that they were good at making the girl that they were with feel pleasure.
And that's like popular entertainment.
That's right. And all you got to do is go to the supermarket and you'll see, good sex,
Right.
better sex, 10 ways to have amazing sex, and this is the secular view of sex, that it's all about pleasure, it's all about orgasm. And what we would say from a biblical perspective is if God enters into the bedroom, then my definitions of good sex and bad sex start to shift, they start to change, like a lot, where as a Christian what we would say is there a moment where the fruit of the Spirit should not be active in your life? And clearly the answer is no. Well, then it's like, okay, well, take the ideals of the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, kindness, self-control, and apply it to how you're operating in the marital bed, inside of your sexuality. And is that your view of good sex? Of just, it's about me and the love that I share with my spouse and the love that we have with God, and about reflecting Him in that moment and seeing the intimacy that God has with us and reflecting in the intimacy I have with my spouse. And like, that's your idea of good sex, as opposed to, did I get off?
Right. Absolutely. So that's another great question to talk about, especially with the older teens, to really get into that nitty-gritty talk. But just that idea of like, hey, what do you think of when you think of sex is going to really reveal a lot. And again, your students might feel uncomfortable, but maybe at the kitchen, when you're making some food, just ask them some questions, get them a burrito and, and then have those chats.